This video I'm going to show briefly the important steps on how to install the PiggyBack fly-high ballast fat sack system from Wakemakers in a 2012 Malibu VLX. This is with the system all done. Got the fill or vent hoses connected, and they run along the side so they don't put pressure on this divider quite as much as the old PiggyBack system did. There's one drain down at the bottom, goes into the hard tank, and the other drain at the back that also goes to the hard tank. Essentially what you're doing is you're taking both of the ports on the top of the hard tank and turning them into fill ports from the drains on the bottom of the bag. And it doesn't really matter which port you use for filling or venting on top, but you knowing your boat the best, you know what part of the bag is the highest when you're riding. So I'd probably put the vent port as the higher part of the bag, which in my case usually is the rear, because the front gets kind of held back by this divider here just a little bit. This is what it looks like with all the ports installed. The rear drain, the front drain, and then this is the fill port that'll be on top of the bag, and then the rear vent, which I still need a connector for. So I decided to make a video on the installation on the PiggyBack system from Wakemakers for a 2012 Malibu VLX. These are your two ports on top of the hard tank in the engine compartment here in the locker, and those are both going to be drains coming from the dual drain bag into the top of the tank. So I've already got one of the hoses hooked up here. It goes back in the engine compartment, and it's going to drain at the back of the bag right here. But there's a problem here because it's too long. If you have any rise like this, if the hose isn't flat or below the bag, you're going to get an airlock, and the bag will only drain to however high this is off the top of the tank. So I'm going to shorten that up and make it more flat so it'll drain into the tank. Okay, so I got the drain hoses installed. What you want to do is use a hole saw like this and cut through so that there's space. You're going to have to make it a little bit bigger to get the fitting, the 90 turned around, or the elbow. Here you want room there so that you don't have such a 90-degree kink in your hose, so that it can drain all the way back to, or drain from the back to the front. And some people say to heat up the hoses, but I can tell you that sometimes when you heat them up, they'll get hung up, they'll get too soft, and then they'll get hung up, but they won't twist on. They're really hard to get on and off, especially off, but if you lubricate the hose and keep it cold, on these particular fittings, they'll go on there. Other fittings, you might have to heat them up to get them on, but these I would just make sure they're lubricated before you put them on. And there's not much room here for flexibility. You can see that this turns on top of the tank, but so you're gonna have to make sure you've got your bag in here and figure out where the fitting is going to be right in the center, because it doesn't have much room to play with that short hose. Okay, so this next part is the fill hose that comes from the pump into the top of the bag. So the water goes into the top of the bag, and then out the dual drains, the bottom of the bag fills up the hard tank. The pump, located by the transmission underneath the rear seat, comes up into this anti-siphon loop here, and then so you figure that out where it is, and then you tie in your I think this is an anti-siphon device or one-way check valve, into the loop right there. And there's extra hose, so you can make the turn. So it comes in up here, goes down, and I've got a loop here, goes back up, and then the hose comes routed around the top, and then back to the fill port on the top of the bag. Now you can reroute it to the front if you want. It'd be a shorter distance, but you'd still have to go through the anti-siphon loop, as far as I know, and then turn around somehow and go back up and get onto the top port of the bag. But that's how I've got mine set up. Another thing you want to do with the drain hose in the aft is drill a hole through the engine divider protector plate, and then also put in some zip ties here along the route just to keep the hose flat, because if the hose goes up, it's not going to drain the bag all the way. So you want the hose as flat as possible, even with the bottom of the bag, so it'll go into the hard tank. Okay, so what I didn't show you was earlier this vent hose was on one fitting and the fill hose was on the other one as the stock ballast was set up. So this was the pump and this was the vent. One or the other. They're both fill or vent. So you have to remove before you do the project, remove this vent hose that goes up through here, and then out the vent port, the side of the boat. I'm going to remove that and replace it with the Wakemakers kit that has the black valve, the black anti-siphon valve on it. So here we've got the overflow or the vent port hose. It goes up off the bag into this black check valve. It's kind of hard to see, that Wakemakers supplies. I'm not sure why they use two different types, but it just simply ties into the existing vent through the hull. But that's basically it, just one hose with a check valve. So there you have it. That's the complete install on the newer PiggyBack system as of January of 2015 from Wakemakers. I still have to put on another port and get another bag, but that one's all plumbed, ready to go. A little faster draining and filling, faster to switch sides if you're surfing. Not as fast as a surf gate, but I like differential weight from left to right anyway, in order to keep the wave a little bit steeper than a evenly loaded Wakesetter with a surf gate.